welcome back to my YouTube channel and to another daily art recap video. Today it's the very last one, so I'm recapping weeks 52 and 53 of my daily art challenge. So this is a challenge that I started last August and it's been going for one whole year where I drew 6 days a week. I shared it over on my Instagram and then I come here on YouTube and do a recap of the last 2 weeks, talking about how I found it, my favourite pieces and what I've learned from the challenge so far. So because this is the very last one, I'm going to be recapping weeks 52 and then it's just 2 days of week 53 because the challenge was 313 days total. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this at the end of the video, but I'll be recording a video all about doing a daily art challenge if that's something that you're interested in, and like a Q&A of how I found it, and that will be next Sunday's video, so keep your eye out for that one. For now I'm just going to jump right in and we'll start with week 52. This is for day 306 and I'm really pleased with how it turned out. This is just in my A5 Royal Talon sketchbook, and although this turned out differently to how I expected, I'm really pleased with the result. So these are referenced from the Natural History book, which is a new book that I got in July and have been really enjoying drawing from. I've done a few spreads like this where I've filled it with one subject, and I did talk about that in the previous daily recap. But I really love that because it's really easy to fill a page and I do find it quite simple to do. I always just use my gouache layer to sketch, so I just use my paintbrush and find the shapes, and I don't like to sketch first. I tend to avoid butterflies because I don't feel like I'm very good at them, so I never really do them. So this was a really good way to practice, and one of the reasons why I find them difficult is because of the symmetry and trying to make the wings the same either side, so I just decided to lean into the imperfections on this one, and I wasn't so worried about making them perfect. I really wanted them to be wonky. I really just wanted to have fun with this page and not worry about the end result. And I really am happy with the colours. I love how this all looks. I thought this would be different because once I'd done the first layer, they were obviously a lot more colourful until I added on all the brown and the black details. So because I had the first layer in my head, I felt like I was hiding a lot of the colours. But because I've had a bit of distance from this now, I can really see that it works, and I just think it works really nicely. I think this is one of my favourite butterflies, and then there's a couple of moths on here as well. And I have made this into a print in my shop which looks like this, and so that's available in my Etsy shop if you are interested in a print of this one. But I'm really happy with how this turned out. It was a really lovely, colourful start for weeks 52. Day 307, I was in my little 12 by 12 centimetre Royal Talon sketchbook, and these were just some really quick studies of these trees from photos that I'd taken in the New Forest. I really enjoy working in this size sketchbook because it feels very manageable, and sometimes with the daily art challenge the hardest part was starting, so by reducing the size of the page I really found that helpful to just get started and know that I don't have to spend hours in my sketchbook to create the art. So these were very quick. And they are quite rough and messy, but I think they work really nicely together. They aren't in the same location, but I did use the same colour palette, so it does look like they are. I only used brush pens and Neocolors for this, so there's no gouache or pencil details, which is why they are quite rough and messy. But I really like the trees. Trees are always something I want to practice because I do struggle trying to make the branches and the trunk look natural. So this was a nice way to do it. And I do enjoy just adding on loads of scribbles for the Neocolors and creating a looser style. I'm also pleased with the pink that I've added. I think that adds a nice pop of colour, and these pages are quite vibrant and I really did amp up the saturation compared to how they looked like in real life. But I like the stylisation and this was a nice easy spread for me. For day 309 I went onto MapCrunch, which is a random Google Maps generator, and it took me to a new place I hadn't drawn before, and that was Portugal. So again, I was in the A5 Royal Talons and I split my spread into panels again and drew the views that I found there. So I started with gouache for this one, again to lay down the shapes. I did draw the panels first and then I found the views to fit into them, so I didn't work in them sequentially. It depended on what view I found that would fit best into that panel. And so I did my gouache layer first and then I went in with coloured pencils and a little bit of Neocolor, which are like the golden three that I always use. I really like the way this turned out. It's a little bit messy now where I forgot to put a sheet of paper in and worked on the other side, so it's not the best and most cleanest piece, but I do like how it turned out. I think it has a real softness, and I also think that the colour palette really helps with the warmth of Portugal. I think that really comes through. I didn't spend very long on this one. Again, I wanted it to be quite a quick page. It was a really busy week for me, and although it was like the last full week of the Daily Art Challenge, and I wanted it to be a bit more grander than I did it, I really didn't have the time, so I really had to squeeze in the daily art where I could. So in total, this was just over half an hour. This little one took 7 minutes. This was 10, 8 and 8. So they didn't take a huge amount of time, but I do find, as I talk about a lot, the timer really helps me to work fast and I'm not overwhelmed by choices. I just have the timer on and then I'll just get it down on the page. So because of the timers, obviously it's not super neat, but I do think it worked really nicely and I really like the visual language of this page, and it was nice to draw somewhere different as well. Day 309 is a very different one for me, and it didn't do very well on Instagram, I think because it is different to my usual ones, but I wanted to experiment some more with acrylic ink, and so I created this really bright sunset piece. So all of the background here was created with acrylic ink, which I've used before, and I managed to mix all of these colours from the primary set of 6. And then down here for this lighthouse and the brick structure, this was done with gouache, and I also added some more gouache down here. So when I first did this, I really liked the sky. This is obviously the main impact and the main focus of the piece. The one thing I wasn't happy with was the layout. So originally I had this brick structure as it was in the reference, which I will link down below as I do with all of the daily art pieces, but it kind of came out over here and there was like a lot of this like brick stone structure and it just threw it all off. So I decided to paint over it some more with the gouache and also the acrylic ink and cover that up and make it work better for my layout. It's still not perfect and I don't really love this lighthouse down here, but I do love the warmth that it adds. I think if it was like a stark white lighthouse, it wouldn't be as warming. Like, although it is sunset, it definitely feels like it's in a warmer country, and I feel like the stone and this beige effect really works with the lighting. This white bit down here, I don't know if that comes across, but I wanted that to be like the waves crashing into the structure. And I think that works better here where I left the white behind on the sketchbook page rather than where I've tried to go over it with gouache. But I also added in a few highlights on the waves with a white Posca pen, and I think that helps with the lighting. And overall, I do love the impact of this one. I think it's really dramatic, and it was also really fun to use my acrylic inks again. Day 310 was another really quick spread in my sketchbook because again, I didn't have much time. This time I wanted to try and test myself and draw the most complicated reference pictures I could find and do it in just 10 minutes. So this is the result of those. These are referenced from a copyright-free image in Barcelona of the Sagrada Familia, and then this one over here of Park Güell is from my own reference photo when I went to Barcelona a few years ago. And obviously with 10 minutes each I couldn't get down all of the details, so I really have to decide what's important to include. I also only used brush pens, Neocolors and coloured pencils. There's no gouache or wet media on here because I didn't have time to wait for it to dry. So I blocked in the colours first. This is with the Ecoline and Tombow brush pens, and then I added on all the details on top with the pencils and Neocolors. I think this one over here is my favourite. I'm really happy with the people at the bottom. I think that helps with the sense of scale. And then I did enjoy some of the patterns here, but I definitely think this one doesn't work as well as this one. It was really fun to create, and I really like this looser style, which always comes from me working quickly. I find that working quickly helps me to not overthink, and I always enjoy working in the timer, even though obviously I'm a little bit more panicked trying to get everything done. It really does help your subconscious brain work out what you need to do, because when I'm actually on the timer, I don't actively think this is what I need to include to make this work for the viewer. It's kind of just a subconscious thing that happens, and I think that really helps with creativity, and I always recommend a time challenge if you haven't done it before. So I also am really happy with the colour palette. I think the warmth of the like pinky beige shades really work, even though this isn't exactly what the colour shades of the buildings are. I think it works nicely in this setting. And for 20 minutes, I think this is a really successful sketchbook spread and definitely something I want to do more of. Day 311 is another spread which is referenced from the natural history book, and this time I filled the spread with bugs. So again, it's a very colourful page, very similar to the butterflies. Again, I went with gouache first, no sketching, and just found the shapes with my paintbrush, and then I added on all the details which really brought the bugs to life using Neocolors and coloured pencils. This one I am going to make a print in my shop as well, but this one didn't do as well on Instagram, which, considering it's basically a similar subject and the same sort of layout, it always surprises me how different Instagram can make it. So like it will show it to less people or something, or maybe less people engage with it and prefer butterflies. I always find that quite interesting and definitely something I've learnt from the Daily Art Challenge. But I really like this page. I really love the vibrancy of the beetles, and it was really fun to use all of these colours. I really enjoyed adding on all the patterns and the line work, and also like putting in all the little details with their antennas really did add a lot of energy and life to this page, and I'm looking forward to making this one into a print. This is going to be in a similar style to the butterfly one and the mushroom one, so I'm going to add this to the series. On to week 53 now and day 312. This was created using photos I'd taken from a walk I'd done with Mitch the previous day. So ideally I wanted to do a plein air piece whilst I was there, but we ran out of time. So I always recommend taking photos when you're out and about, so you can reference them when you come back to it later and have a bit more time to create. But I created this panel page using the photos from our walk from Bewley to Buckler's Hard. I'm really happy with how they turned out. Again, the colour palette I think works really nicely. It feels like a warm summer day, I think because of the pink tone neutrals and also the yellow toned greens. You can see I've added on my little colour palette there, and I do get asked why I do this, and it's purely just a visual aesthetic sort of thing. I really like the way it looks on the page. I don't like come back to this page and have a look at what colours I've used and work out shades that way. I just like the way that it looks, and I'm happy with this spread because I feel like it captures the walk really nicely. I really enjoyed painting it. This actually wasn't done with paint at all. This was done with Tombows, brush pens, Neocolors and coloured pencils again. I think they all work together. I don't think that there's one that I love more than the other. And I didn't spend a huge amount of time on here, but definitely longer than the previous week ones. This was on a Sunday, so I had a little bit more time. And I think that comes through because I could add on a lot more details, especially up here with all of the leaves. And overall, I really was pleased with how this turned out. So the next one is day 313, which is the very last piece of the Daily Art Challenge. So this was 313 out of 313, one whole year of doing daily art, and I decided to create this zine referencing pieces that I'd already done. Because it was the last day, I really wanted this to be special, so I made a mini zine and then I just randomly picked out different pieces from the whole year. I didn't pick out like the most popular ones or the ones I loved the most. I just picked out pieces randomly, mostly because it was kind of a difficult task to pick out of 313 anyway, and it was just easier to pick at random. But I'm so pleased with how this little zine turned out. Because it was the last day of the Daily Art Challenge, I did really want it to be grander than the others, but obviously I didn't have a huge amount of time because it is a daily art project and you only have a day to like turn around the artwork. And I have created little zines like this before, so it's not something completely new. You might recognise the front cover. The styling was taken from the In Between the Trees zine that I did. And I did film the entire process of this one and talk through a little bit more in detail about the pieces and the materials over on my Patreon. If that's something you are interested in, I will link the video down below. So I just did mini paintings of the paintings I was referencing. I just used gouache, Neocolors and coloured pencils, so I didn't copy the mediums I did a lot of these in originally, and I did that mostly because of time. These aren't perfect, they're not perfect copies of the artwork that I did because I didn't have a huge amount of time, but also because of the size. It really is quite constraining to work at this size. If I like this fish piece I did mostly with Neocolor, and I just wouldn't be able to get the preciseness that I'd need to recreate it here. So I just did it with coloured pencils and gouache. But the main thing that I wanted was for the pieces to be recognisable. My audience grew massively during this daily art challenge, and during the first 6 months or so I had a lot less people seeing my work, so it was nice to throw back to those earlier pieces that maybe a lot of people wouldn't have seen. And then of course, like, as my audience grew, they might recognise some of these older pieces that I did. It was really nice for me to go back through the daily artwork so that I could reference this and see where I started and really see how my style and artwork has developed. That's going to be something that I talk a little bit more about in next week's daily art roundup video, and hopefully I'll be able to share some tips about where I find my inspiration. I've had quite a few questions about motivation and finding references, so I'll be sure to include that. But I really found that the daily art challenge has helped my style massively. It's also increased my confidence and built a really lovely community over on my Instagram and here on YouTube. So to me, it was one of the best things that I've done, certainly artwork wise, and although it was really difficult at times, it's definitely something I'm glad I did and I don't regret it for a second. So it's been a habit that at the end of these videos over the last year, I've shared my favourite of those 2 weeks. I've got a few less ones to pick from here, but I'm going to have to go with this mini zine as my favourite just because it really sums up the whole daily art challenge for me. I feel like it captures a lot of the colours and the styling of a lot of my artwork, and it was really nice to end this in a way where I felt comfortable just drawing the pieces I'd done before and seeing how my style has developed. And I also think it works really nicely just by itself as a zine. It doesn't matter if you haven't seen all of the other pieces, I think it works as an individual piece. And this is something I do once you scan in and make available as a zine on my Etsy shop, so that's a project which I'll be working on over the next few weeks as well. So I'd love to know which is your favourite piece out of week 52 and 53 down below in the comments. And like I said, this is the very last daily recap, so thank you so much if you've watched them all or come in halfway and have been watching my videos. I really appreciate seeing all your support here on YouTube and reading your comments and finding out which is your favourites. It's definitely been a journey and I'm so proud of myself for finishing it, and I really do feel like my artwork is in such a different place from where I started, and I feel much more confident and happier with my art style. So if you did want to start a daily art challenge, I couldn't recommend it enough, but hopefully my video next week will provide some helpful tips. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week for that video. Have a lovely week and I'll see you then. See you later.
Woke up wanting you beside